Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rates and Lanes podcast. I'm your host, Rico Muhammad. I'm trying to make sure that we just popped in. Just trying to make sure that we were going live on Instagram tonight. We got that little bit of a situation kind of rectified. So we are live on Instagram tonight. So please do us a huge favor, like, share, and subscribe, especially if you're watching this on YouTube. You can interact with us. I think I'm not sure as far as Instagram is concerned, but if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, you can interact with us via the chat. If you have a question tonight, just type your message into the chat, and we'll definitely try to weave it into the show. Um, Tonight we have a special guest that is joining us tonight, and I'm going to let my co-host introduce him when we get ready to bring everyone back up. But please, a little bit of book housekeeping before we get started. Um, so if you find any of the information that we share with you guys tonight, whether it be entertaining or helpful, or you know someone that might be able to benefit from this information, please share the show with them by all means. And before we get started tonight, we'll get ready to jump into a little bit of industry news, uh, let you guys know what's going on out there as far as the diesel rates and spot market rates as of right now. Uh, Coming from Overdrive Magazine is our source on this one tonight. Insult to injury, diesel prices spike above $4, while spot market rates remain down for the third consecutive week. After falling to the lowest national average price since July during the week ending in January 8th, diesel prices have slowly been climbing until the recent week ending in February 12th, according to the Energy Information Administration latest report. Meanwhile, to add insult to injury, spot market rates overall have been falling since spiking with winter weather mid last month. So we're showing that the national diesel price average, excuse me, diesel national average has fallen to $3.83 from the first full week of the year, then climbed back up to $3.90 by February the 5th. During the most recent week, however, diesel prices have spiked by 21 cents, jumping back up above $4 a gallon for the first time since early December. The U.S. national average for a gallon on highway diesel is now at showing at a national average of $4.11 per gallon, the highest since the week ending in November 27th, when diesel averaged $4.15 per gallon. And so hopefully we're able to get the tide turned on this situation. Hopefully diesel starts to fall back down to earth. And hopefully maybe you guys are perfecting those negotiating tactics and you're getting better rates out there than just the normal average rates. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and welcome in my co-host this evening, my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow. Good evening, Chuck. How are you?
We're doing well, Rico. Things are going pretty good, and I'm excited for tonight's show. Mike Paolozzi he's somewhat of a media sensation all over Instagram, trucking it old school. He's a guy that's been pounding pavement for the last 30 odd years, and he's what you call a consummate professional. He is totally old school, and I love talking to him because this is the old school wisdom that we all grew up with that's disappearing pretty quickly. So I'm honored to have you on the show. Mike Paolozzi, thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Enjoy doing the show.
Well, we love having you, man. Lots going on. I just want to do a little bit of a rant. I just had the experience. I'm not going to say pleasure, although I had fun, but it was hair raising. Driving from the Toronto area down to Fort Lauderdale area, left on Thursday, got there Saturday morning, and what I saw with and it wasn't 18-wheelers. I just on the whole trip down, there were lots of trucks. I only saw a couple of boneheads, but the behavior from four-wheelers has gotten so bad. Like I've done this run with my cousin down in Florida, same thing every year for about the last 6 or 7 years. And and it progressively gets worse every year. And this year it seemed to jump even like much worse than it did other years. And I'm thinking to myself, the federal government in the U.S. and the states are climbing all over the trucking industry, and the statistics prove that the trucks are not the problem. Well, you know what? I can prove that we're not the problem. I don't know why nobody is mentioning the behavior of car drivers. It's insane what I'm seeing out there. And no wonder trucking has all of a sudden become the third most dangerous job in the United States. It probably is up here too. It's even with all our fancy safety stuff, it's gotten insane. And I have no idea why cops seem to be nailing people for speeding, the radar traps, but not for bad driving. Doesn't seem to be an issue. I didn't see anyone from here all the way to Florida get pulled over for driving like an idiot. And I saw people using every lane at 100 miles an hour, zigzagging all over the road. So it's just that's my rant for today.
No, that's a justified rant. I can tell you that right there. Like, I drive St. Catharines to Vaughan every day, to and from work. And like I say, I was telling you earlier, I run a dash cam now, not just the windshield. I have a camera in my back window too.
Yeah.
Just like I could do a 2-hour show every day just on crazy driving in that area, because everyone's so entitled now on the road that they can do what they want. And if they cause an accident, they just take off. The chances of them getting caught are pretty slim. So,
Well, yeah.
like, look at what was it? 6 weeks ago, we had that tanker rollover in Beamsville, where the guy lost 30,000 liters of fuel, and he got cut off by a car that was cut off by a BMW or a Mercedes, and he almost went into a house with a full load of fuel.
Oh.
And they're still 6 weeks ago. They're still cleaning up that spill. Like, the tandems came off the trailer, off the truck, everything. It was a straight tanker. It wasn't a combination. And 6 weeks later, they're still cleaning up the spill.
Unbelievable. It's somebody's got, and I know up in Canada it's different in the U.S. Because of all these, and my concerns were true. What happened is we have so many protests going on right now. Is the police are taking their attention off of traffic, and it's all being diverted to crowd control at protests. This is crazy.
Yep.
And people are getting hurt on the highway as a result. That's why we're seeing people are using this as a free pass to drive insane.
And then when they do get caught, what's the first thing they do? They go on their social media. They're doing a video of the police officer who's trying to talk to them, and they're getting a little lippy with the cop, and they're trying to agitate them. And then once they get them agitated, they edit the video and just show one side of the conversation.
Yeah, I you know what? My hat goes off to cops. I couldn't do that job. I wouldn't last one shift.
Yeah, it's hard getting police now. Like, down in our area, they're begging for people to come onto the force. They're so understaffed. I hear the OPP's the same way. And if you try to put in speed cameras, then when it comes to the next election, the opposition's going to use that against the.
100%. They do have them in. They're using them in Toronto now on side streets,
yes,
very effectively, and I think that's where they should be. No points, but you know what? The tickets are expensive, and these are on residential streets because Waze routes you on everybody's street.
That's the one problem. Like, I use Waze sometimes to get around stuff, and it's like, now I'm going through a residential neighborhood. I feel guilty about it.
Yeah, my God, it's taken me on goat paths in Toronto I didn't even know existed.
What I would like to see them put in here is, like, when I was up in Scotland a few years ago, driving up to Inverness to go see the Loch Ness Monster, they have speed cameras every so many miles, and they don't take your speed at the camera. They take your average speed between the cameras.
Right.
That's where the ticket is.
Yep.
So people say, oh, there's a camera, I better slow down, and then they speed up after. Well, if your speed's 80, what is it, 10% plus one over the speed limit, that's when they start sending out the tickets.
Yep. If I am not mistaken, and I could be wrong, but in Kentucky, the Blue Ridge Parkway was doing that over 50 years ago. It was a
so way you can control it now.
Yep. You know what? It works. If you got from point A to point B too quickly, you got a ticket.
Yeah.
It works. And I think I think technology is really going to change things. And speaking of technology, you and I kind of met the other night on social media about inward facing cameras.
Yes.
And we both, and I know Rico agrees with them, but there's a lot of people out there that are looking at this as an invasion of privacy. If you're doing something you shouldn't be doing while you're driving a truck, if you're watching TV or drinking alcohol or anything, not paying attention, then you know what, you're not doing your job.
That's right. Like the one thing I looked at was, like, people will argue, locomotive engineers, there's a camera on them. Airline pilots, there's a camera on them. Ship captains, there's a camera on them. But none of them are living in that compartment. None of them are getting changed in there. None of them are sleeping there. None of them are taking their personal phone calls while they're sitting still somewhere. But that camera's always recording, and they will say it, unless there's an incident, which it'll pull the previous 20 to 30 seconds, but that's all it'll show. That camera's still recording, and so is that microphone. So when you're in your truck and that's your personal living space, sometimes you're out there for a week, there is no privacy for the driver.
Yeah, but you know what? If you're not doing anything wrong, first of all, nobody's looking at you taking your pants off in the bunk.
That's the biggest complaint I hear. They say, what happens if it does record something? And then it gets.
Well, I mean, there's a curtain. There's normally a curtain right there. That, there's a curtain or a partition, or if nothing else, if you really trying to protect your privacy once you get parked. I mean, pretty much everybody walks around, has a baseball hat. Just throw the baseball hat over it or something. I mean,
good idea, Rico. We all take our pants off to go to sleep. It's no big deal. It's silliness, but the insurance companies are pushing for it, and companies are pushing for it. And you brought up such a great point. And especially now, not so much up here in Canada for the most part, but certainly in the US, they're taking people, especially the big carriers, they're taking people that have never been in a truck before in their entire lives as a driver or passenger. And, they come from all different parts of the world and all different parts of the economy and everything else. And they give them a course, and 6 or 8 weeks later, they're out by themselves in all sorts of weather, with 80,000 pounds. You want to see how they're doing.
That's if it's only 80,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Up here where they're running tridoms everywhere.
Yeah. And, we have some states as well, like Michigan.
109,000 pounds up here.
Yeah.
I know the first time I went solo in a tractor trailer, I was 120,000 pounds.
Whoa.
First time I went solo, and it was with mill rolls sitting in blocks with 4-inch straps on them. Each roll was 10,000 pounds. Whew. No chains. They were chromed, no chains. And the guy who rode along with me for the first week, he said, you never want to hit the brakes. So you drive like you cannot hit the brakes. And that's how I learned. And that was back in 1987, I think it was. And that stuck with me. Like, very rarely have I ever hit the brakes hard in a truck. When you're being proactive and you're not watching the car in front, you're watching the car a mile down the road. If they're starting to slow down, you start to slow down because everybody else is going to start slowing down. Don't wait for the brake lights to come on in front of you. Then it's too late.
Now, Mike, I don't know if you've had this experience or not. When I've road tested drivers that have spent an awful lot of time in the American Northeast, Jersey, New York, Connecticut, that area, I do notice tailgating. Just
Yes.
that, and you have to break them of that habit. And you know what? A camera is a wonderful tool to make sure, you can tell them, you got to stop this nonsense. We don't run into that area. So there's no reason. And I've said to a guy during a road test, if you had to stop now, you would kill that guy.
Yeah. On all my road tests in the last year, I've never
Yeah.
had one driver tailgate. That has never been an issue. And like I was telling you earlier on, usually my road test, the failure is at the pre-trip of the truck.
Yep.
As being on the road, I have yet to fail a driver for their actual driving.
Really?
Yeah. They're
Well,
driving.
I've actually driven the truck back.
I haven't had to do that yet.
Oh yeah, shaking so bad I thought I needed a drink, but I didn't take one. It was the middle of the day.
No, it seems that the guys I tell them, I said, when we're going to do this road test, I said, it's like you're getting your license to go with the MTO. I want you to talk to me, tell me what you're looking at. Just don't go through the motions. I need to know what you're looking at. And it's the pre-trip on just the truck alone is more than enough to tell me what I'm getting into.
Yeah, kind of like a Smith system with the driving Smith system pre-trip, so to speak.
Well, one guy one day, he opened the hood, checked the oil, closed the hood, said, "Let's go." I said, what about the rest of the pre-trip? He says, "You're not going to send me out in an unsafe truck, so let's go." I said, "Well, that gate you walked through a few minutes ago, you can go walk back through that gate." I knew
Wow.
that attitude was not going to cut it with me.
Wow.
I got to tell you, in the last 5 years, my only regret was I took a guy out and he drove beautifully. He did the pre-trip beautifully. Everything was good. And when we were unhooking, he didn't lower the air from the airbags on the tractor. And that made me wonder if this guy really had that much experience. And I went back. I didn't say anything to him. And I went to HR and I said, "Listen, I need you folks to do me a favor. Can you do a deep dive on this guy and just make sure that he does have the experience that he does? He drives beautiful." And they came back, yeah, this guy is. And I hired him reluctantly. First trip, he's down in Florida somewhere at a Walmart. And he was in the dock, and they asked him to leave his trailer there and move his tractor to the side of the building. And they would call him when they were ready to have him pull the empty out. And when he was there, he didn't put his brakes on, didn't pull his yellow button. And of course, the truck rolled in to another truck. It was $20,000 damage. And he came back, and I let him go, and he offered to pay the money. He offered to pay the I guess I was a bell ringer there. He offered to pay the $20,000, and I said, "No, you know what? Don't worry about the $20,000. I don't want you around here," because my instinct was correct.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, Chuck. Before I started my own company, I was working for another company, and we pulled triples and doubles. I won't name the company, but if people know me, they know which company it was that I was working for. So we pulled triples and doubles, and I tell you, when hooking up a set of doubles and stuff like that surprisingly happens more often than you would think. Just by people sometimes getting in the motion of moving a little bit too fast and not paying attention, they'll hook up to that second trailer and jump out going back to try to hook everything up and never pull the brake on the tractor, and won't know until they get in between the trailers.
Yeah. They learn the hard way.
Yeah.
And
Sometimes they don't get a second chance.
I'm telling you, I have seen many a guys, whether they were able to think quick enough to snatch the red line off so that the trailer brakes would engage. But I've seen many a guys that just try to hightail it back up to the tractor to try to pull those brakes. Right?
You got to be real fast.
I tell you what, I've seen a couple of older guys that look like they might be ready for the NFL combine. They had some fast 40 times, Jack.
Rico, that brings me to a question, and I saw this. I've seen it for years, and I still saw it on this trip down. Doubles in the U.S. for the most part, all these big LTL carriers, they all use what we call up in Canada A-trains, okay, with the converter dolly.
Right.
They've been using those converter dolly things since I learned to drive a truck back in '74. That's 50 years ago. You know what? You would think that those companies, I know it's expensive, but would, just for the sake of safety, because those things, as you know, go all over the road. They're wiggle waggles.
Well, if you make the mistake of hooking up the heavy one in the rear and not putting the heaviest one in front, that thing gonna dance all the way down the highway.
Yeah. And it doesn't take much, even if you've put them properly. It doesn't take much for those things to just react unexpectedly.
Yeah, it doesn't take very much. I used to enjoy driving them when we drove them, because if I ever found myself in a situation where if I needed to get over a lane or something, you can just barely move the steering wheel just like that, and that back trailer will get to doing a little bit of a dance, and it opens right up. now because I especially coming through Atlanta, rush hour traffic in Atlanta, and nobody wants to let you over or anything. But I tell you get a little movement back there. Everybody all of a sudden remember what it brings. So
your city is as bad as Toronto. You know that?
It's just not as wide. What are some parts of the 401 are 18 lanes wide now?
Yeah.
Street?
Yeah, it's insane. But they put way too much. They just put too much traffic on one roadway. Yeah. It's just it's silliness. Mike, what are you at your company? And can you say the name of your company? Do you mind?
No, I don't have permission to say it, so I shouldn't.
No problem. But are you guys using A-trains at all, or trains?
No, we're just we're a distribution company.
Okay.
And we just use 53 footers for everything.
Okay. And do you run straight trucks as well?
No, just truck trailers.
Okay. So it's pretty, and everything is truckload, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's and what Rico was saying at the beginning of the show, he was talking about what the spot market is like. That's still a reflection of how many small carriers that don't have their own customers are out there and they're hurting. I get calls all the time because they didn't build up that customer base, during the pandemic.
Yeah, we've had.
Go ahead, Mike.
We've had the same customer for 29 years, and we're getting up to 300 loads a night out of them.
Whoa. Okay.
Yep.
So you're an integral part of their business.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that the biggest problem is that you have a lot of people that have gotten into the industry, and sometimes they understand and they know how to drive a truck. They don't have no problems whatsoever driving the truck, operating the truck. I think that a lot of people struggle with certain amount of soft skills or different type of skills to be able to transition and take the trucker hat off and put on the salesman hat or the CEO hat or whatever type of hat that needs to be had in order to go in and procure a customer base for themselves. We've gotten messages on this show from Race and Lanes, people asking about which industry, which segment is doing the best. And we really can't. If I'm going to be honest with you, we can't answer that question directly because every inch of the country is a little bit different. And the
Yeah.
best way to know that you have an opportunity just to go off into a little bit of get on my soapbox for just a second. The best way to know what segment is the best for you in your particular area, you need to go and do some canvassing. You need to see which customers in your backyard. Who do you know? Who do you know that may be working in those places that might be able to help get you a meeting? Make an introduction. Take a little bit of time to familiarize yourself with LinkedIn so that you can maybe try to create some contacts at that particular customer. But then on top of that, that's one aspect of it. Go into the customer, find out where their problem is, because of course you're somebody new coming in. You want to come in with a solution. So if you're able to go in and approach somebody and you're willing to try to be a solution to a problem that they're having, they may be more apt to give you a chance, to give you an opportunity. So if you can secure one, and one thing that we talk about here on the show is we always talk about trying to develop a dumbbell, trying to understand what your service markets are. Whether if you're based in Nashville, Tennessee, where are you going to run to that's around Nashville, Tennessee? Or are you going to run back and forth between Nashville and Memphis, or do you going to run from say Nashville to Kentucky, somewhere in Kentucky? You need to kind of put down your dumbbell, figure out what service areas that you're going to want to service, because you can't, as a small carrier, you can't be all things to all people. You have to find something.
That's why all these guys are getting into trouble, because they're trying to be all things to all people, and it doesn't work. You brought up a good point though, Rico. People ask what segment is good and different. You have some segments that are very strong in certain areas. You got the meat patch, which is always good for reefer. But if you're a flatbed hauler or a heavy hauler or a dry van hauler, and all of a sudden you hear that reefer business is good, and somebody rents you a reefer, or you get you decide you're going to buy one, you don't know anything about it, you can go broke pretty fast hauling reefer.
Absolutely.
It happens. You have a load of berries turn on you, or anything. And then the other thing about reefer freight, besides for the liability for the product that you're hauling because of spoiling, or because I've had reefers when I got into this business where the thermostat was off itself on an old reefer that I had borrowed from somebody, and somebody told the driver to set the temperature to 39 degrees for a load of bananas. And when he got to, listen, I didn't know anything at the time. And the driver, it was my first truck with a driver when I was just starting out with hiring drivers. And driver didn't know. And the guy actually marked down in pencil on the bill lading 39 degrees. And he got up. Driver got up to Toronto with the load, and the receiver said, "How was your trip, driver?" He goes, "Yeah, it was good." He says, "What'd you set the temperature at?" And he said 39 degrees. And I got a call from the guy that gave me the load, and he said, "Hey, Snowy, you like banana bread?" And I go, "Yeah, I love it." And he goes, "Well, start baking, buddy, because you just bought 40,000 pounds of bananas." Guys, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. This was like the fifth load we had hauled. And I drove up to Machino Banana Company. I don't even know if they're still in business. And somebody upstairs was watching. The thermostat was out by 14 or 15 degrees. Everything pulped at 54. Woo! And yes, I said to the driver, "Take this reefer back," and we're out of the reefer business now. And it was decades until I tried it again with a reefer. And then we froze a load of lettuce coming back from California. And
lettuce is so easy though.
I got rid of that. I had some wild-eyed driver who didn't check anything, and so we sold that reefer. And then years later, we ended up buying 50% of a reefer company. And these guys knew what they were doing. And we learned. And we learned the right way. And you know what? Traffic does a lot of refrigerated work now because of that. But you have to have training and same as if you're a reefer hauler and you decide you're going to start hauling heavy haul, oversized. If you don't know what you're doing, you can be in a heap of trouble.
Yeah, that's oversized. You're just one permit away from losing everything.
You know what, Mike? I just read something today about a company in BC, 2 companies in BC. And ladies and gentlemen out there, if by chance you're hauling an oversized load into British Columbia, these guys do not play touch football. They play full-blown tackle with knives, okay? If you mess up there, and one company, they had 6 incidents within a year and a half or something of hitting bridges and things. So they took away, and this is a licensed company in British Columbia that has they have another division in Alberta, and they shut them down. And their argument was, well, we can run out of our Alberta company, and it's going back and forth because we don't have a federal legislation like the U.S. does, where you have a Canadian DOT number, like you do in the U.S. You have a U.S. DOT number, and whatever you do in Mississippi affects you in Minnesota. You know, it's a federal thing. We don't have that in Canada. So there's a lot of switching provinces and all sorts of stuff. And there was another one I just read about. The carrier was hauling a helicopter and hit an overhead sign. He didn't kill the sign. He damaged it a little bit. They took away his operating authority.
I don't know. I tell you, one of the things that when I was coming up and when we were when getting training, and Mike, I know you know, I'm pretty sure it sounds like you guys are a little bit more of an established company who you deal with, and so you're not really hiring fresh people that are too green. But it
3-year minimum.
Yeah, it just amazes me that the amount of people it was drilled in our head coming out of training. I first went to training for they're long gone now. Moving stars, what they call them on the highway, MS carriers. That was my initiation right there out of Memphis, Tennessee. Old Mike Starnes. That's where my trucking career kind of began. But they had a pretty good staff there. They hammered in our head as first things first. They when we got there, everybody had to have a road atlas. You had to have a road atlas, and it hammered in our head just some of the primary basics of understanding. You know, tractors with all of their tractors had the 22 low profile tires on it.
Right.
So they were a little bit shorter than 13.6. So if you came up on a bridge, like they kind of tricked us a little bit in training because they got a couple of 13.6 bridges there in Memphis.
Right.
And so the tractors are a little bit shorter with the 22.5 low profiles. Now I don't know if I'd try this in my own personal truck, but back then, we went under a couple of posted 13.6 bridges in the Memphis areas, and I guess they knew that they understood that they could clear them. But I don't know. I don't think I'd be bold enough to try it, like I say, in my own personal tractor, and it's kind of set up that same way. So, but like I say, it's just so much primary, and you don't see many people that walk around that even carry the atlases anymore. The amount of information that you can find, the wealth of information that you can find in the atlases, whether or not if you need to know what proper weights are in each state as far as axle weights. Understanding how to look up. People don't even we've become so reliant on GPSs. Shoot, I remember the days before GPSs when we had to go into the back of the atlas to kind of find the cities and go back to the grid and go.
Okay, so you do have some years under you there.
Oh, it's funny. I know a lot of guys, they still carry the Atlas, women
Yeah,
too, because they want the big picture.
right.
Yes.
They don't want to know, okay, oh, I got to turn now. They want to know, like myself. I used to have, like, in my pocket, I would put points. When I saw the McDonald's, I knew, okay, 2 blocks past the McDonald's, I'm going to be turning left. So I'm not focusing on the GPS. I like to be proactive where I was going and have as many things I could identify without having to look at notes to say,
Right.
okay, this is coming up. Okay, I know I'm going to have to turn left here. I know I'm going to have to turn right. I thought the Atlas and the full scale maps were great.
I totally
Absolutely.
agree.
But yeah, like I say, we've become so reliant now. And you see, especially you guys on social media, you see all the posts, everybody posting the truck out in the middle of nowhere, and the GPS said keep straight. You know,
Guys, we had a driver several years ago that had done. We bought this little company, and driver had been with them for 20 years. Did the same run every single Sunday for 20 years, and it was from Toronto to Massachusetts. He calls us one Monday morning and he says, "Listen, I screwed up. I ended up." Somebody said Atlas is mandatory tools. I totally agree. He said, I screwed up. I'm on Highway 87. I'm just south of Montreal. And he had gone on the New York Thruway all the way to 87 and then all the way north on 87. And what happened was, for Christmas, his wife had given him a Garmin. And for the car, it wasn't even a truck Garmin. And he was using it, and he took the wrong way after 20 years and ended up way off his route.
yeah.
And I do think, this
He,
technology
he
is
thought he was going to learn a new way. That's what he thought. They thought.
yes, yeah. The new way
He
didn't
said, I've been
work.
going this way all this time. This is going to show me a shortcut. That's what
Yep. The profits got cut in half on that trip.
Yeah, exactly. We actually canned the guy shortly after that because he did a couple other stupid things like that. He was just he just wasn't cutting it. But
man, Chuck is the Grim Reaper up there, but he better not. Better walk the chalk line with Chuck, man.
But we had a guy when I used to do tanker.
right.
We had a driver. He was training a new driver, like a guy just out of school. He's I'm going to train this guy, and they were going from Port Colborne down to Delaware.
Right.
And so the guy who owned the truck, he's sleeping in the back, and he hears some talking up front. And he says, "Who are you talking to?" He says, "Oh, I'm talking to a state trooper." Why are you talking to a state trooper? He says, "Well, I'm on a no truck route, apparently."
Woo.
He's like,
Whoa.
"Well, where are you?" He says, "Connecticut."
How did he get to Connecticut?
I don't know. They were running the 17, and somehow he got down near the 81, and he zigged when he should have zagged, and they were all the way up in Connecticut, and a little different than being in Delaware.
Yeah, it's about 300 miles different.
Yeah, it was a time sensitive load, so of course the customer ran out of product, and their bakery shut down for about 14 hours until they got the load down there.
Yep. It's unbelievable what people do, and they're not thinking. And what I think, this technology is incredible, but it does make you do lose your sense of direction from using this technology. I know myself, I've got a great sense of direction, but I'm losing it because I'm always using my Waze.
Well, I think, just the human factor. I think that sometimes, speaking of, like we was talking about with the trailers, I think sometimes we become distracted. We may become mundane. That's the thing about trucking. That human aspect of it. And sometimes, when you get into a rut or a routine about certain things, and your mind has a tendency to sometimes drift off. And I'm pretty sure every truck driver out here has been driving long enough can tell you a story when he was supposed to get off on the bypass and was just He was just, everything seemed to just been going along just so smooth. And then he looked up and said, "Wait a minute," because I this has happened to me going to Augusta, and I almost ended up in Savannah. You know.
Oh, geez. Yeah, it happens. You know what? You just kind of you're just not thinking, and you know you do have to think. But I do think that all this technology is wonderful till it doesn't work. What do you do when you're out on the road and your GPS, or your Ram McNally, or whatever flavor you have, all of a sudden starts not working?
Well, I think that's the other thing that you know, with all this training that's supposedly supposed to be happening, and you got so many people with restrictions on their license that they can only drive an automatic now, and you got so many that don't even know how to drive a manual transmission anymore. That's, you know, I think that I don't know. I know that everything is going the way of automation and self-driving and all this other stuff that's supposed to be coming down the pike. But I think that we're just doing a disservice if we're going to train people. Let's train them all the way. I think that the old school training probably was the best training, because even all of the training, I think that we when I first got started, we went through like a 4-week training course at MS Carriers. I don't know if many places still doing a 4-week training course right
So
now.
you were totally green, and within.
I drove school buses in high school, Chuck.
Right.
So I had a CDL, but I had a Class C CDL with a passenger endorsement. But then when I decided to start driving big trucks, of course, you know, you have to get the combination and all that stuff. So I had the air brakes and all of that stuff on endorsements on my license already, but it was just a little old Class C. So we went through a 4-week. They put us up in the hotels. We had 4 weeks of 2 weeks initially classroom, and then 2 weeks out on the road. And then we had to go out with the trainer initially, and we were with a trainer until we were released from the trainer. The trainer had to eventually sign off on us. Right. And even through all of that training that I had, my first trip out, my first week out, I learned so much stuff that never even popped up during training, but having enough of a basis, of a solid foundation of training basis kind of helped me, and having some phone numbers in my phone to call some people to figure some stuff out that I was like, okay, I'll give you a simple one that I can remember. Knew how to slide was trying to slide my tandems to you know, move my weight around. Knew all about how to do that. But the thing had gotten stuck. You know, old trailer don't got rusty.
Nobody put any grease on it. Probably hadn't.
Thing gotten stuck. Didn't know. So I called a good friend of mine. God bless the dead. He recently passed. And he say, man, just lower the landing gear on that thing and drop your because I was trying to move my fifth wheel is what I was trying to move. He said, man, just lower your landing gear on there and drop your airbags a little bit, take the weight off of it, and it should help you out. And just like that got the fifth wheel, got it to break loose and slid. Like that was like, to me, you know, that was a godsend but like I say, my very first week out there, you don't learn every single thing that you're going to learn in training. But if you got a little bit of a foundation to give you the basics, and then if you got hopefully you got some phone numbers or some other people that you may have while you were in training that you can call upon to rely upon to maybe kind of fill in the blanks for you as you're going. You can kind of make it out here. But I tell you that it seemed like all kind of stuff just popped up that first week when I got out there by myself. I was like, now why in the hell couldn't none of this stuff happen when I had a trainer or something?
But that's the lesson you never forgot, is it? You know,
like I've always said, every day is a school day in trucking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, Mike.
Once you stop learning, failure starts.
Absolutely.
And like right now, like the three of us, we're what I call our obligation years. When we started driving, when we were in our 20s, the older drivers were obligated to coach us along. They seen us doing something wrong. They were there. They didn't. embarrass us. They didn't shame us. They taught us.
They
And
were great.
now we're in those obligation years. And the problem is they're designing trucks now so that anybody can drive them, but not anybody should be a truck driver.
I agree.
This is true.
And
Well
when you
said,
try to
Mike.
help some people now, they say, I don't need your help. I know what I'm doing. And
I don't know. If I heard somebody say that, I don't know what I would do, but I wouldn't be happy.
Oh yeah,
You know,
yeah, that happens all the time. People don't want your help. They don't want they don't want your help. They don't want your assistance. And you got some people that have some nasty attitudes out there, which is part of the problem.
yeah.
Well, they won't last in this business because you've got to be learning all the time. There's nobody, even, there's nobody that knows it all. Nobody.
No.
Because things change.
Yeah. And like for me, the biggest change that was the biggest mistake, I think, was taking the gear shift out of the truck, because that was the connection between the driver and the truck.
I agree.
They've taken the gear shift out. By taking out the gear shift, it's like having a broken neck. Your brain is there, but it can't control your body anymore. When you had the gear shift, you slowed the truck down with it. Now something happens, you try to make one move and the truck's trying to make another move, and there's no connection between the truck and the driver anymore.
Well, I'm wondering, okay, what happens in the winter when you're in a place like Colorado or your Donor Pass and you've got an automatic and you're on ice and you can't gear down because well, you can, but the truck has to do it, but you don't have that control the way you did when you were driving a 13 speed or an 18 speed or a 10 speed. It's just not the same.
Right.
Well, you can still put it in you can still put it in manual with the automatic.
Yeah, but do you think I've driven them and it doesn't feel the same? I don't.
No,
feel
it's
like
not going to feel the same, but it does have the option. It definitely is not going to feel the same.
But when you've been trained on an automatic, you haven't been trained how to manually downshift an automatic. Especially when I used to do tanker work, it was open barrel tankers. So we had 90,000 pounds. It was food grade, so there's no baffles.
Right.
And it was heat sensitive, so you only had the one lid to load into. And when you've got 90,000 pounds, you got to shift between sloshes.
Right.
But when the load's going to hit the back wall, you're not accelerating. You got to wait for that. But the automatics, they're saying, oh, time to shift. And you like have to work the throttle very carefully not to let the transmission shift. But when you don't know the difference between the manual and the automatic, and you're like people driving automatics now, load momentum is an art form that you learned with a manual shift, and the automatics don't know that art form. You'll never be able to teach it that.
Yeah, and the problem being, and I understand. First of all, I remember when I got into trucking in '74, an ad for Allison back then in one of the trade regs, and it had I think I was a dealer. That's where I saw the trade reg, and it had a picture of a bunch of young guys, like really young kids, 14, 15 years old, and it said, meet your new drivers. When they start driving, they'll think clutching is something they do to their girlfriend. And and you know what? They've been shoving this down our throat for 50 years. They finally picked up momentum because all the car manufacturers stopped making manual. And where's somebody under the age of 40 years old, unless they were brought up on a farm, where are they going to learn to drive manual? That's where it starts.
And they just put so many sensors in the trucks now that the people, they're relying on the car now to take care of them so they can do other stuff while they drive. Yeah,
that's not good, because you know what? You got to drive the truck. Truck shouldn't be. Now I realize there's collision avoidance and lane, all sorts of wonderful things, which is great until it doesn't work.
Yeah, and when it doesn't work is when the driver's not paying attention.
Yes, it's like my wife's car has these sensors that tell you when there's somebody beside you, which is great. But if you don't look in your mirrors and that sensor doesn't work, and you go to change lanes, you didn't check your mirrors, boom, you hit somebody.
Yep.
You know, we were taught to look in your mirrors, always be checking your mirrors.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's the whole old school way.
Yeah. And I don't know where, I don't even know where you would teach. I have a young cousin of mine that is, he's gone through as a firefighter, and now I've told him to get his straight truck license because that'll help him. And I don't believe he would know how to drive a manual. And I was thinking, you know, I wonder where I could teach him, because I don't have any manual cars. I have big trucks that are manual. They're old ones. I wouldn't put him behind the wheel of a 60-year-old truck. But I can't even go and rent a car with a manual transmission in Toronto somewhere to give him a driving lesson. And even if I went to Ryder or Penske to rent a straight truck for them, they're all automatic.
Well, I remember I looked up, actually, funny story talking about Ryder. I looked up and needed to go rent a truck, and the only truck that they had one truck left on the yard, and the only reason why that one truck was left on the yard was because it was a manual. It's like, can you drive a manual? Sure can. Looked up and got the rental truck that day. But Mike, speaking of old school, and we opened up the show, we was talking a little bit about how much diesel fuel has jumped back above $4 per mile. And being that, you know, trucking it old school, what are some tips that you guys that you may help out somebody as a trainer to kind of help them understand on what's the best way to drive to kind of conserve or help get the best fuel mileage possible on a truck?
The first thing I do, like one thing I will say, a little plug for myself. Every time I've done a road test, every driver at the end has said, "You're the first person who's ever taught me that." And it's usually how to check their brakes.
Yep.
And with braking is the biggest cause of fuel mileage failure. You're braking too hard, you're braking too long, and you got to keep the distance so that when the traffic slows down, you only need to slow down 5 miles an hour. You don't need to slow down 40 miles an hour and start over again.
Right.
And that's the biggest drawback. Like for some of our drivers, they're doing 6-8 drops a night. So
Right.
they're like, "Oh, I gotta go. And I say, well, you know, if you would just stay back and just cruise at a slower speed, you'd be
Stop
getting there
racing
quicker.
to the red light.
Yeah, you're going to get there quicker because you're going to be maintaining a speed instead of up and down, up and down.
That's so, yeah.
Like when I owned a truck from 95 to 2004, and when I got the truck in 95, I was paying 38 cents a liter. And I had a 3176 cat engine in my truck, and I was getting 9 miles to the gallon.
Whoa.
With a kitty under the hood?
Yeah, it was a 350. It was a C10, and I was pulling quads.
Wow.
Now, mind you, a lot of
That's
times
impressive.
I was coming back empty, so that would peak it. But running 456 rears with a 10-speed transmission, you really have to learn how to figure out how to do that drive to get that kind of fuel mileage, because that combination, I should have been getting 2-3 miles to the gallon on the way up.
Yeah. You know, I'd heard about those C10s being a really good engine.
When they worked, when they were working, they worked really good. But I only got 300,000 kilometers out of the first one, and they had to do an in-frame because the liners and the rings weren't compatible.
Yes.
So I was going through 2 gallons of oil a week before they did one of the over 4,000 in-frames. You had the C10 cat. It either started with a 7LK or 9CK. And if it started 9CK, you weren't going to get 200,000 miles out of it. And that's the one I had.
Whoa.
And see, that's part of the, you know, it's getting close to time for us to get out of here. And I hate to kind of take us down a little bit on a somber note, but that's the kind of the kicker right now, why things are so difficult in the industry right now. This is probably the toughest time since I've been in trucking that we've had.
It's one of the toughest times I've seen in 50 years, to be honest.
Yeah. It's the first time I'm afraid to be out there.
We have terribly unreliable equipment. Once the equipment starts breaking down, it's insane to repair the some of the repair prices, and then and if you can even find the parts to get it repaired, that's the other little fly in the ointment, so to speak. And so and so you couple that along with high fuel prices, high labor rates for repairs, low spot market rates if you're running spot market. It's definitely a recipe for disaster, and so just try to encourage everybody out there. Now's the time to really try to sharpen your pencil. Try to make sure that you can not necessarily, I don't want to say cut corners, but try to be as efficient as you can possibly be in your operation. Try to make sure that you're trying to be as fuel efficient. Slow down a little bit. That's one of the biggest things. Like Mike was talking, he was saying, but even when you're cruising, you ain't got to go 75 miles per hour. You ain't got to set the cruise on 75 miles per hour.
There's no reason to go 75 mile an hour in a truck. You can't stop the bloody thing if you do have to stop. And you know what? You're beating the hell out of your equipment, and you're throwing all the money up the stack. Any money you think you're going to make on that hot load, that's flown out the window or out the stack.
Yep. All of a sudden, you're doing tires sooner than you need to. You're doing brakes before you need to.
Yeah.
And with the fuel after treatment now, you're burning all that unburned fuel is just clogging up that DPF. And you're supposed to get 150,000 miles out of that filter. You're only getting 90,000 because you're getting so much ash building up inside the thing.
Yeah.
And personally, get rid of the EGR and let the fuel burn at the right temperature. Fuel mileage is going to go back up. Oil consumption is going to go down. If they want to save the environment, look at the big picture, not just what somebody who sits in a lab says, let's do this, because we all know that NOx sensor is the biggest drawback right now to trucking. The NOx sensor goes, the truck's down, now you're getting towed.
Right.
$3,000 tow bill for a $150 part that's going to take 2 days to put in while they order it.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, we appreciate you for taking the time out to come on the Race and Lanes podcast to join us tonight. We definitely
I love doing this. Anytime you guys need me, I'm here for you.
Well, that's very generous, and we want John again because you know so much stuff. You really
Are you
do.
going to Truck World?
Yeah, no, I might be. I'm going to Matt's for sure.
Okay. I've already got my ticket for Truck World.
I've got one too, but I don't know if I'll make it because I've got a whole bunch of other things right at the same time. But I'm certainly going to make it down to Louisville because I've got that planned already.
So before we get out of here,
retirement
Mike,
should be. I want to be doing what Chuck's doing when I retire. 5 more years.
Okay, buddy. Well, you can come up and play with my old trucks with me.
Okay.
Before we get out of here, Mike, you would like to leave any information as far as if people wanted to find you or ask you a question, anything like that, anything you want to leave us with before we jump out of here?
Yeah, it's at Trucking It Old School on Instagram, and you can also go to Trucking It Old School now on YouTube. I'm starting to put videos on there. I take questions from drivers around the world. Male, female, young, old. You just want to talk about something, send me a message. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But trucking has always been a community. Even though we work as individuals, we're still a community.
Absolutely.
And the closer we stay together and the more information we share with each other, the stronger that community is going to stay.
100%.
So I make myself available. Like I said, these are my obligation years.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your generosity to us and to the industry. We need more people like you. You and Rico and me, we all think alike as far as giving back, because we had people there not standing with video cameras when we were struggling to get into a difficult dock. People came and helped us. And you know what? A couple of times, I'm not ashamed to say, when I was starting out, a guy climbed into my truck and backed it in the door for me because I was having a tough time. I was having a bad day. And there's not a truck driver out there, even a seasoned truck driver, doesn't have a lousy day sometimes.
I had to do that a couple of times for some people.
You know what? I paid that forward 100 times, where I helped the guy get into a difficult dock, or either by guiding him in or hopping in somebody's truck.
Well, there's been a few times I've actually been the pylon. Just said, you're cutting it at the wrong angle. I'll stand there. You got to make that trailer go around me, and then you're going to get it in the dock.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And that was scary, I'll tell you.
Well, Chuck, let the good
Yeah,
people know how they can find you, my friend.
If anybody wants to reach out, if they have any questions or suggestions for the show or anything, please reach out to me on my email. It's the fastest way. chucksnow280@outlook.com. Put your phone number on. I'll probably call you back. And with that, Rico, I'll let you back her in the hole for another week.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we definitely are always appreciative of you guys tuning in to the show. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you took a little time to hang out with us, and we're always grateful for you doing so. So for my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow, and for our guest, Mike, this has been the Racing Lanes Podcast. Hopefully you found something informative out of the show. Please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe out there. Stay healthy. Keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise. God bless you and good night.
Catch on the flip-flop.
See you next time.
God bless. See you next time.
Yes, sir. Thanks again, Mike.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.